everybody. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I've got Paul Ross. Paul Ross is on a passionate mission to guide already successful sales professionals and entrepreneurs to radically uplevel their sales results. He's an author, speaker, elite sales trainer, master hypnotist. I'm interested in learning more about that today, and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. Over the past 30 years, he's guided tens of thousands of people to use the power of words to design their own results. I'm excited to have him on the show today. Paul, welcome, man. It's great to see you.
Thank you. I have a lot of energy. As we were speaking in the green room before, my trainer kicked my butt. So my body's all filled with power and energy. And I will give you a show. You'll want to go an hour with me. I understand we only have 40 minutes, but let's make the best use of it and deliver some goods and diamonds to your audience.
Well, let's dive in. So I know that this is like you were like the sales machine. I know you just came out with a book too that people can read in an hour and get in just unimaginable value from. We're going to get into that today. But for those that don't know, you tell us your backstory and how you
Sure.
got to do what you're doing
Well,
today?
my backstory, I don't put it in my bio because I like to spring it on the host as a surprise. I originally got my start as a dating coach, I'm just going to say the word pickup coach. And so I was the guy who could not get a date. It was always the buddy, the big brother, the friend. And I got tired of that. I was ashamed of my body. I had body dysmorphia. I'm 6'2", weigh about 215. I need to drop a few still. Back then, I weighed 127 pounds. I looked like a skeleton, was ashamed of myself. Then I stumbled into NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is a lot. I won't get into the details of NLP, but I used it to heal my shyness and to learn to have conversations with women that were actually emotionally intriguing and charming. And I started getting dates and girlfriends. I thought I could teach this to other guys. So I built a career, made a lot of money doing that. And one day I started getting emails from students with pictures attached of their wives and their families and their kids. And they would say, thank you. I met my wife using your stuff. And I've been using it in my sales. My sales are 300% better than the next guy who used to be the top guy, or I've quadrupled my sales. Impossible. And so I thought, let's map this over. I can map over everything I learned about dating and being charming and into sales. And if you think about it, there's a really nice correspondence. In both of those, you have to do your prospecting. You have to have rapport. You have to ask the qualifying questions. You have to delve into what their needs are. And you have to do some closes and maybe handle rejections. And so I came up with my first course in 2006. I'm a perfectionist. I kept revising it and revising it. And so now what I specialize in is taking already successful people. I don't, with all due respect, I don't work with people who are struggling, but I tend to work with people who are doing mid six figures to seven figures. And as whacked out as it sounds, I can improve their sales by at least 30% or 90 days, or I'll give them their ROI back. I guarantee a return on their ROI, or they can train with me for another 90 days for free. I've gotten, my thing I'm most proud of is I trained a mortgage broker. He was mortgage loan officer. He was doing $1,500 a month when he started. By the end of working with me for 4 months, he was making over $30,000 a month, which is a crazy increase. So I'm deeply blessed and happy. And you can tell I'm a joyous person and I love to teach. So that's my backstory.
Now, I can immediately tell when we hopped on the call, like your energy was just incredible, especially for someone I was like, dude, this guy's got it going on. I don't know if it's just because you just got your butt kicked in the workout or if you're
That's a
always
big
like
part
this,
of
but
it,
I'm
right?
like, my grandma used to tell me growing up when I was little, she's like, man, Brandon, I wish I just had a little bit of your energy. And I hopped on this call. I was like, man, I wish I just had a little bit of his energy, man. So sales, let's jump in because I think everybody in this audience that's listening, no matter who you are, no matter what industry you're in, I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're selling. Whenever you're trying to convince somebody to do something, whether it's someone to buy a product or your kid to go to bed or eat their broccoli, you're selling. So when you're working with clients, what would you say are some of the top mistakes that you see that come to mind that they're not doing where you immediately plug your coaching in? It's almost like low-hanging fruit for them to get results. Does anything come to
Yeah,
mind?
absolutely. Well, first of all, understand Brendan, I'm very contrarian. I think outside the box. I like to disconnect the dots, color outside the lines, paint on the walls. And so the first thing anyone needs to understand, I don't care what your industry is, you're never selling your product or service. You're not selling houses or medical devices or cars. You're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions.
Yeah.
And what distills out of that, the understanding that comes next, is our most important decisions are not driven by logic or facts or data. They're driven by unconscious, by the subconscious mind, where we keep our deepest beliefs, our pain, our doubts, our dreams, our desires. So if you can communicate directly to the person's subconscious mind and guide people's imagination, you have tremendous power. One of the principles I teach my VIPs is whatever you can get your prospect to imagine as being their own thought will be whatever you can get your prospects to imagine for themselves will be perceived by them as being their own thought, and therefore they will not resist it. So sales, if you think about it, how do we do that? Well, sales is not just about putting suggestions in your client's mind. It's
Mhm.
about expanding their mind to include your new ideas. Can I unpack that for you?
Yeah, please do.
So look at your job as a salesperson, not as being creepy or being slimy. Look at it as being a hero. I want all of the people listening to reframe it into thinking themselves as a hero. And let me explain what I mean by that, and even a healer. Imagine that we have a beautiful room right on the shores of Hawaii. There's white powdered sand, crystal clear water. The sky is blue. There are dolphins jumping. And we have a beautiful room on the beach with a huge bay window. And our clients, our prospects, aren't looking out. They're looking at that little peephole in the door at the hallway to make sure no one's coming to hurt them. They're looking through that little peephole of their limiting beliefs. Our job as salespeople is to expand their mind into new possibilities about what they deserve, what they can have, to sort of metaphorically turn them around so they can see the view of what's possible for them in their lives,
Mhm.
about what they deserve, what they can have, what they're capable of. We are doing something heroic. We're taking people who are in fear or in doubt or in lack, and we're turning them around and showing them a vision of what their world can be. So it doesn't, I don't care what the product is. It really is a beautiful act of expanding people's minds.
And when you say expanding people's minds, you're talking about the people who are selling the products, not necessarily the customers
No, I mean
themselves
the
or
customers.
the
I mean,
customers.
you're
Okay.
taking the customer and you're turning, they're looking to that little peephole, and I'm
Mhm.
using a metaphor, and you're turning them around and showing them the vision of
Yeah.
what you can have. And
I
that's a
think it,
very healing thing to do.
yeah, 100%. It's funny. There's a little cartoon that comes to mind when I think of like salespeople, and it's like this cartoon of this medieval king, right? He's in the Renaissance period, and he's got his warriors out lined up, about to go to battle. They all got swords, and his assistant is like, "Hey, you need to talk to this salesman. He wants to sell you something." He's like, "I've got no time for a salesman." And you turn around, and the salesman's like off in the distance, and he's got like a machine gun, you know. And that just seems to be like the epitome of every sales guy's. It's the ones who've bought into the vision, actually believe in their product. And so, I remember listening to the greats back in the day, Brian Tracy, Zig
Oh,
Ziglar, and it seems like we've come a long way with how a lot of sales professionals see themselves. I know back then it was kind of the same motto that you just mentioned. It really hit me and it reminded me a lot of things. As a sales rep, sometimes you feel like you're kind of, oh, I'm kind of just sort of slimy and, like that is, I think the problem is people just don't believe in the product. And if you don't believe in the product or service, and you're in a sales job, then it's really hard to push that. Why do you think it is that so many people struggle today to have that mindset that you just explained?
because
Uh,
it's unconventional. Here's the problem. Look, and this is something again I deal with, and again I only work with very successful people. Even the most successful people are stuck. and have pain points. And I'll tell you why they're stuck. And as you're listening to me or watching this, I don't know all the ways you might find yourself really identifying with what I'm about to say. The problem is that everyone is copying everybody else. All the old sales trainings, there's nothing new under the sun. And
Mhm.
so what happens is it becomes a race between you and your competitor to get to the prospect first. And also, many salespeople are just working harder and they're barely moving the dial because the old stuff just doesn't work the way it used to work. And I will explain why if you allow me to do so. First of all, I don't have my iPhone with me, but your smart device, this is a flip phone. This thing has destroyed people's ability to focus. And
Yeah.
also, so nowadays, even if your prospect wants to believe you, they don't have the focus they used to have. So you have to use the power of suggestion to get them focused in on you. Second, they have too many options, too many choices. They're bombarded by so many options, and a mind that has too many options just doesn't know how to make a good decision. And the third thing is, and no one else teaches this, and I teach techniques, not just the principles. It's no longer enough. Know, like, and trust, which is what we've all heard. You've heard that, right? In
Yeah.
Salesforce, everyone repeats that. That's necessary, but it's no longer enough. You have to get the prospects to trust their own ability to make a good decision. It's not enough to get them to trust you. You now have to get them to trust themselves. And people are leaving out that piece. And that's why you're pushing harder, but you're not moving the needle, barely moving the needle. If you want to make exponential jumps in your revenue, you have to think differently. And
Mhm.
so that's my contribution and answer that question.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point there. It's I'm hoping someday we can completely eradicate it. I think it boils down to, when you join an organization, you should not join that. You should be sold on the product or service before you join 100%. So I think there's a little bit on the job of the organizations to do a little bit better job of maybe even educating people on what they're selling and knocking down those limiting beliefs. And that's where you come in because you're the guy that can do that. Let's
There's
jump
enough.
into some
Yeah. Yeah. Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's jump in here because talking with you, we're talking about some of the topics today, and you've got like these 4 words you can use in the first minute of your sales presentation to create immediate, unbreakable
Yes.
rapport and trust. And I'm
Yes.
like, that made me very curious because I knew we're gonna
Yeah.
save it for this. What are
Now
the four
this
words?
now
Like, tell us the
actually
four
there's
words.
actually there's five. I want to preface this with a little caveat. This is going to sound bizarre. It's going to sound like a way you would never ever talk, but it's the very ways of thinking, feeling, believing, acting, and speaking that stand so far outside of what you're used to doing to hold the potential of giving you massive better results than you're used to enjoying. So here are I would say something like this. In the beginning of a sales presentation, typical thing is, Mr. Smith, today we're going to show you the marketing plan, and you'll see that we've sold 5 houses in your neighborhood for 10% above market value. And we've been in business, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I teach my clients to say. Before we begin this exploration together today, I just want to share a request. Will you promise me you'll please share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision is being made? So let's look at the words. We, our, explore, together, share. There are 5 words. So listen to this. Before I didn't say before I show you. I said before we is the start of implying a relationship, right? Instead of I. Before we begin our, again, that's something we're doing together, not I'm going to show you the marketing plan. Before we begin our exploration or explore is an incredibly powerful word. And I'll tell you why. For every exploration, there must be a leader. And for every leader, logically, there must be a
Follower.
exactly. So immediately we're implying on the unconscious, subconscious level that they are our followers. We're not saying it directly. We're not saying, Mr. Smith, you will believe every word I say. You will view me as your leader and you will view yourself as my follower. We're implying it. So before we begin our exploration together, again, together is implying a relationship, right? Before we begin our exploration together today, I just want to ask you to promise me one thing. Now, do we make promises to people who we don't trust? No, it implies trust. Will you please share the questions? I didn't say ask the questions. Will you please share the questions? Share implies a close relationship, right? Will you please share the questions that naturally arise? Here's the killer point: when a great decision is being made. Now, I know I'm unpacking a lot. It's a little confusing, but let's get to that last phrase. Why didn't I say a great decision to buy from me today? It's
Because it's your idea, not theirs.
exactly. And it's too high pressure. When I say a great decision is being made, that's so vague, the subconscious mind will activate and think, I wonder what that means. Is he saying I'm going to make a great decision to buy? What does it mean? And when you create that little bit of a subconscious search, you create a state of suggestibility. Now, I know this is going over everybody's head. I unpack it in this little book. You can read in an hour. I'm just introducing these concepts. I know they're overwhelming, but as you go through the book or decide to study with me further, they'll become not only clear, you'll be able to apply them.
Yeah, I see what you mean and how it translates to neuro-linguistic programming, right?
Yeah,
You're subconsciously priming them on like how the conversation is going to
it's
go.
priming. It's
Very
priming
powerful. And so
them.
what and just to kind of recap, so what exactly, because we unpacked a lot there, just to recap, what were those 5 words that you said that you can use to
We,
go report? We,
our, explore or exploration, together, promise, and share. Actually, 6 words. But there's 6 words, but here 5 or 6 words. But here's the thing: if in 90 seconds, as I claim, you can create states beyond rapport, you can get. So what's better than them trusting you? You can get them to trust you. But you know what's even better than trust? And this is going to raise a lot of hackles, and you're going to get some hate mail. You know what's better than rapport and better than trust?
what?
Compliance.
Uh,
Compliance. I'm just going to say it: following you, viewing you as a leader, complying with you. Now, you can do it in a gentle way, a compassionate way, a soft way, a loving way. There's nothing wrong with making people malleable and compliant as long as you're serving them and you do it with love and you do it with a sense of play and you believe in what you're doing.
Wow, very, very powerful. If I'm sitting in the room with a client, what's the first thing about your prospect that you need to focus on and take into
Yes.
consideration if you're wanting to
Yes.
increase your sales?
Again, this is a whacked out way of looking at it. So here we go. I'm not thinking what's their personality type? Do they fit the DISC model or Myers-Briggs or any of that? I'm thinking, what state of mind do I want them to be in? What states of mind do I want them to be in? So my communication goes right through that. I have to teach this through a metaphor. Let's say I have a sheet of cardboard and a sheet of gold foil, and I want to conduct a current of electricity. This is not a trick question. Which one is going to conduct the electricity, the cardboard or the gold foil?
Gold foil.
Exactly. So view your prospect's state of consciousness, their state of mind, their emotional state is the conductive medium. Do you want them in a cardboard state of being unable to focus, of being bored, of being cynical, of not trusting you, not trusting themselves? Mm-mm. You want to create states of focus, of trusting themselves, of trusting you, of being excited. That's what I want. And then the communication is perceived through all those states of mind. Does that make sense? I ask myself, what states of mind do I want them to be in before I communicate the electricity?
Now it makes complete sense because you've got your reptilian brain, right? That's really driving the
Yes.
machine here.
Yes.
It's the emotional machine, and you got
Yes.
your neocortex, right? The front of the brain that's responsible for all the
Exactly.
rationality. And I remember when I was doing the sales role in my organization, and back when we were flipping houses, I would actually go, business to consumer. I'd go to these homes, and I took a sales course for it at the time. I think it was the John Martinez sales course, and I can't remember how he labeled these questions, but you're wanting to get the the customer in an emotional state. And one of the ways we would do that is we would ask them, okay, hey, what would you be doing right now if you'd already sold your house? Imagine if you didn't have to do with all these repairs. What would
That
that feel
first
like?
question is brilliant. Imagine what you would be doing now if you already sold your house, because it presupposes they've sold their house and it's taking them into the future, which is what we call in hypnosis pseudo orientation in time. So it's creating a state of hypnotic suggestibility. So that's a very good question. I love that.
Yeah. And one of the things that we do kind of early on, and you sort of preluded to this in your question where you said, hey, do you, I can't remember how you worded it, but do you promise to ask me
Share
any
the question,
questions or
not ask.
share?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was share. It was the key word there. Share any questions. We
Yes.
would go, hey, before we get started here, let's just be in agreement that if any time during this process that, you feel like, something's coming to mind, you want to share it with me,
Right.
just let me know that, or you feel like, we need to take a pause, or, something's unfair, or I've
Exactly.
said something that if any, just let me know.
Exactly.
Okay. And so, cause your worst thing as a sales rep, and at least in my experience, is not the word no. No means we can get somewhere. No means we've got an
Yes.
objection, we can overcome it. The worst word
Exactly.
is let me think about it, or maybe. And so if you can get that prospect to give you, if you can give them permission, or have them give themselves permission to give you the no up front, well, then you
Right.
can do about it. Otherwise, if they don't feel comfortable telling you no, then they're going to give you a
Yes.
maybe, or let me think about it. And that's the worst
Exactly.
possible thing.
Exactly true. And not only that, you'd be surprised how many prospects don't ask, don't object because they're afraid of looking stupid. They're afraid of looking confused. So in some cases, you need to earn the right to hear the objection. You need to create so much trust in themselves that they'll actually do the objection. You have to earn the right to even get the objection half the time, not all the time. And by the way, that whole thing, I need to think it over. I've got a great objection crusher. If you want to hear that, I'll give it to your
Yeah,
audience.
it was that was my next question is let's talk about objections now. Do you have a framework? Because I've got one that comes to mind on
Yeah.
how you handle objections.
Yes. Yes. Well, first of all, I don't do the standard stuff. I don't do, so if someone said I need more time to think it over, I would not immediately say, I understand that maybe there's some things that we need to clear up. So can you tell me what it is you need to think about? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Here's the challenge. They've heard that before. And a tactic identified is a tactic disarmed. And all your competition is doing that. Remember, if you're only doing what your competition is doing, then you're only going to move the needle a little bit. If you want exponential results, you have to think outside the box. So if someone says, I need more time to think it over, I want to shock them. I want to break rapport and do a pattern interrupt. And here's what I'll say. If they say, I need more time to think it over, I'll say, I understand. Can I ask you a question? Have you ever taken a long time to think something over and it still turned out to be a horrible decision? Maybe it's not about time, but about the clarity you need to recognize it's safe to move forward today. So thinking about it like that, what can we get out on the table to let you feel comfortable moving ahead? So what you've done there is you've destroyed the objection. They can no longer think about it, because here's the thing. People think, move, act, behave in fixed patterns. When you interrupt that pattern, you temporarily create a state of suggestibility. I would rather talk to a client and find out their objections if they're in a state of being suggestible than not, because when they're suggestible, I get to maintain control of the sale. Control is not bad. It's not bad. In any conversation like that, someone's going to have control. Someone's going to have the leadership. So you maintain leadership at all times. So please bear in mind, you can do this with love. You can do it with belief in what you're doing. You can do this by being in service of people. It's not black and white thinking, and still aim for compliance, still aim to be the leader. And so I interrupt their pattern with a little shock. It gives them objection amnesia. They can't even remember the objection.
Mhm. You've reframed it too. You've said, okay, you're saying, let me think about it, give me a maybe, and saying, well, hey, maybe it's not this. If you've ever taken a long time to think about something and still arrived at the idea that it's a terrible decision, maybe it's not the time that you needed, it's the clarity. So let's get that out, what, on the table, what are
Right.
you thinking right now? I loved how you did that, because you used my framework that I've used in the past, which is you acknowledge the objection and then you ask a question and you kind of keep playing this game until they're, spitting it out. And hopefully, if you've done the right stuff, and this is why it's so important, like you said, to ask the right questions and break down the walls ahead of time. If you've built rapport with them, if they have acknowledged and given and said that they, hey, if I have a problem with this, I will let you know. Right. I'll
Yeah.
tell you no. I will be comfortable telling if you've done everything, then you should be able to kind of get somewhere. But really, when people say, let me think about it, or maybe it's like, I want to say no to this, but I'm just uncomfortable telling you no because I don't want to make you feel bad. I don't
Yeah.
want to make it awkward, again, because we make emotional decisions around these things.
Yeah. And when people continue to hem and haw, I'll pause. I'll say, look, let's pause here for a minute. I don't want to waste your time, and you certainly don't want me. I certainly don't want to waste mine. If the answer truly is no, then let's have deep respect for each other. You can tell me. I would rather hear no and walk away friends than have you hesitate. And I want to give them permission, because look, sometimes it's not a good fit. There's no sin in losing a sale, but it is, I don't mean sin in the religious sense, but you are harming yourself if you take a long time to lose a sale. So if it turns out that it really is a no, that's fine. That preserves my morale. Always preserve your morale, your momentum, and your motivation by learning when it's not a good fit. If it's not a good fit, I don't want to take someone's money if it's not a good fit.
Right. And what I love that you just did there, you made them comfortable with the situation that they might be uncomfortable in to give you that maybe or that let me think about it. You said, hey, Mr. Prospect, I just want to make sure that you're comfortable giving me a no today. Because at the end of the day, we're not a fit for one another. The worst case is we depart friends. Are you okay with giving me a no today? And then boom, you've got it out there. So you said, what's the worst case scenario here? We depart friends. All of a sudden, you've just released a bunch of anxiety that they've been thinking, like, oh my God,
Right.
what if I can't get this person out of my house? Or,
Right.
what I got to tell them no or make them feel bad. It's like, oh, the worst case scenario is we just depart friends. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll tell you no. That's good. You've got it out and you've got it done. So I love that. Do you have any other tools you can use to
Oh yeah.
knock down
Oh
objections,
yeah. Oh
before they
yeah.
happen or
Oh
subconsciously?
yeah. So one of them is what I call compare and contrast. I I've had some clients. Again, I've worked with, I can't, I have a non-disclosure agreement with my big, I've worked with some big chains out here in Southern California. I'm in San Diego, but I have NDAs, non-disclosures, so I can't tell you who they are. But one of the big things real estate agents get, I know not everyone watching this is in real estate, it doesn't matter, is I don't want to pay a commission, or your commission is too high. That one. And so I teach them to say, well, Mr. Smith, what you haven't yet recognized is with the right agent, you're not paying a commission, you're investing in skills. Maybe you'll get lucky with the bargain basement option, but you really want to gamble with the most important investment in your life, your home. So notice the contrast. You're saying with the right agent, implying it's you. You're not paying a commission, you're investing in skills. Now, everyone wants to think of themselves as an investor. No one wants to pay. Paying even sounds like pain, Pain. So you see
Yeah.
the reframe there, and you're
Yeah.
implying that you're the right agent. You're not saying it. Implication is a very powerful tool to get people to put the idea together in their own mind and to imagine it for themselves. So implication is another powerful tool I use.
Yeah, I can see that. So you're implying a a result from something. You're kind of you're twisting it. If
I
somebody has not done the exercise, I go through and this year we did something that I've never done before, which is I called all of our customers and I asked them probably 20 different questions. That is it okay if I write down the answers to all this? Why you do business with us? It's the kind of the big reason, but there were a lot of different other things in there. And what were some of your concerns? And then
yeah.
I went and I built out responses to a lot of the objections that we'd get. Not everybody does that. If you don't have a list of common objections and how you're overcoming and applying that, and I'm sure your book goes into this in some depth,
You got to
like you're
prepare.
really shooting yourself in the foot.
You've got to prepare. And I think one of the problems is people won't do it. Well, the top people do it, but people who are slogging through the mud don't do it because they fear it's manipulation. I like manipulation. Let me unpack that one. Now, there's bad manipulation and there's good manipulation. Bad manipulation is you're lying, you're misrepresenting the facts, you're hiding impertinent or important facts, or you're pushing down on pain points too hard, or you're using coercion. If you don't do this, I'll tell your wife, blah, blah, blah. Good manipulation is just means to move with accuracy and deliberateness. When a surgeon takes that blade and cuts out a tumor, you better believe they're manipulating that thing. It comes from the Latin word for hand. That's all it means. So people get freaked out when they hear that word. Look at good manipulation as just being equal to influence in the service of your client. Do you understand? I like to shock people by saying manipulation is good. And then I get them to reframe it and see what I mean by it.
Uh-huh. What are some of your let's talk about, the closing techniques right now. Because I'm gonna sit, you've got the sales process, you've got, a hinge, access to whoever you need. Once you get access to them, then you do, your needs assessment, then you do your value prop, tying their needs to the benefits of your product, and then you've got the closing. I'm just gonna assume that people know how to do the proper needs assessment and value prop here. When you get to closing, what does that look like? Do you have any frameworks that
Well,
work really well for closing during the
I
sales
want
process?
to I want to reframe this whole thing. The closing starts the moment you connect with your client and get into their subconscious mind. I don't believe that closing is something you do sequentially. I understand it is, but if you look at it from another perspective, closing starts the moment you begin to open your client's subconscious mind. There are plenty of good techniques for closing. You can presuppose, you can say, before we conclude today, as you find yourself signing this document, is there anything else you need to recognize this really is the best decision? So listen to the presuppositions before you find yourself, before presupposes it's going to happen. Find yourself is what I call a trance phrase. What does it mean to find yourself doing something, Brendan? Do you ever just find yourself falling in love?
Yeah, well, I mean, you did some work to kind of get there, but I don't know that it's something that you can control. So yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of.
Exactly. That's the whole point. You can't control it. You're implying that it's just going to happen outside of their control. You
Mhm.
didn't say it. You didn't say, in a moment, I'm going to hypnotize you deeply, and you're going to uncontrollably find yourself signing the document. I implied it. You understand? Through the implication is so powerful. Words are so powerful. Words structure consciousness, shape decisions, drive behavior. That's why I believe in the magic of words. That's essentially what I'm teaching is words can structure a client's consciousness to believe in you, believe in themselves. That's the most important thing. If they don't believe in themselves, they have to believe in you. And there are plenty of courses that teach that, but they don't teach how to get the clients to believe in themselves. If they don't believe in themselves, nowadays, you're just going to be moving the needle. You won't make big exponential leaps. I keep hammering on that point because I think it's what's missing in modern sales training. No one is
Okay.
teaching. Yeah.
So let's close up the closing techniques and see if there's any other stuff that comes to mind. You said the presuppose method because I want to unpack like what that means and how you get clients to believe in themselves. I think that's an important topic. But before we move on to that, are there any other frameworks that you use on closing techniques
There are
that
plenty there. I like presuppositions. So before we
we
conclude this together today, before we conclude this together today, you can even tap on the contract. Before we conclude this together today, is there anything else that you need to recognize this really is a great decision?
Mhm.
I use presuppositions, I use hypnotic language, I use vague language, and that seems to work. But the point of there are plenty of trainings that will teach you some good closing methods. They don't teach you the hypnotic stuff, but most importantly, I'm going to hammer on this again. If the client doesn't trust themselves, all the closing techniques in the world are just going to fall flat.
Yeah, yeah, they won't work. All right, so let's get into that because I'm interested. So, how do we get the clients to trust themselves? You
From the
said believe
very
in
beginning,
themselves.
remember from the very beginning, I said, before we before we begin our exploration together today, will you promise me one thing? Will you promise me you'll share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision's being made? Right from the start, you give that the suggestion, a great decision's being made. Slides right into the subconscious, which essentially says, well, if I'm making a great decision, that means I can trust myself. I'm not saying it. If I said in a moment, I'm going to drop you in a hypnotic trance, you will not only trust me, you'll trust yourself to make this decision each and every time I tap you on the shoulder. I'm not talking about that. But you can use these suggestions to create that state of trusting themselves in a matter of 90 seconds. That's the crazy claim I make. Don't believe me. You can go have a look. I don't want to confuse people, but if you go to paulrossresults.com, you'll
Okay.
see a client who used this stuff to increase his closings by over 600% in 90 days. I know that sounds impossible. It sounds screwball nuts. I won't use the word. I'll say bat bleep crazy. Can I say
Yeah.
bat bleep crazy? Okay, it's bat bleep crazy. But if you go, you'll see his testimonial. Um, I know what I'm saying sounds impossible, but it's true.
No, I mean it really is true, and it's so funny because when you first brought up that you started as a dating coach, I was like, dude, I mean, there's so many translatable qualities
Yes,
from
there are.
dating to sales, like we talked, the ability to get rejected, the ability to understand needs, the ability to listen, to actively listen, the ability to, close from time to time. And I think like when you're dating, it's a lot more easy to use like you're trying to get people to be emotional in the dating, right? Like nobody's at the different, well, you should, go out with me because I make a lot of money and because I work out,
Some
like
people try.
it's
Some people try. That doesn't work.
it
But
doesn't work. Yeah. Like people are a lot more in tune with, oh, I got to get this girl to, get emotional. I got to get her to laugh. I got to get her to, do whatever, I got to get the guy to do the same thing. Like it seems like when the dating world, they're a lot more in tune with what needs to happen emotionally with the prospect than when they're in
true.
a professional setting. It's all of a sudden they turn that emotional brain off and they're trying to like activate their rational brain in business because they think, oh, I'll just talk about how people make more money, how I can make you more money and save you more time. And that's not what they care. Like, hey, look, let me give you let me give you more vacations with your family, man. That's what I'm saying. When I give you more time, right? You're trying to speak to that emotional side, but we seem to fail to do that.
Well, I'll tell you one more thing, and this is going to shock you. I like shocking people. My mother taught me that one day I'd grow up to shock people and be an iconoclast. So, Mom, thank you. Her memory lives with me right here. I would never say you want to do this because I mean no disrespect to you, Brendan. I would never say that you want to do this because it'll bring you time to go on vacations because they may not want that. I'll say, after we completed this transaction, I'm not sure all the things you can imagine it will bring into your life. But as that's taking place, I feel so honored that I've been able to guide you today into making this great decision. I didn't, I just said, imagine all the things it will bring into their life. that leaves it up to their own imagination. Do you understand? So it
Yeah.
seems like I'm saying if you went back and talked to them a month later, they'd say, I don't know how Brandon knew exactly what I wanted from this. When in fact, you didn't know. You just let them fill in the blanks with their own imagination. Here's another contrarian principle. Every other sales training will teach you make the message clear. You've heard this. That's true when you present the numbers, but oftentimes it serves you not to make the message clear. Make it so unclear the prospect has to fill in the blanks for themselves because they'll perceive it as a one-to-one fit. So this is another contrarian principle I teach. Don't always make the message clear. Sometimes confuse your prospects. There's times to confuse them. This is screwball stuff, but it's the very ways of thinking, feeling, acting, and responding and speaking that stand so far outside of what you've been used to doing and what your competitors are doing that hold the potential of bringing you bat bleep crazy results, like the guy whose closings are increased by over 600% in 90 days.
Yeah. I love it. Let's talk about your book, and then we can get into how people
Sure.
can get in touch.
Well,
So
there's two things you can do. First of all, I have my rapid sales accelerator, how to increase your sales by 30% or more in 90 days. It consists of a downloadable copy of this book. You can get an instant free download copy of this book. And there's also a video sales training, maybe 5 minutes long, on how to crush objections. And I recommend you go to Amazon. This book is $7. You can read it in an hour. It has 5 techniques you can use, spelled out word for word, that you can use. Crazy as it sounds, it's $7. You can read it in an hour, and it'll blow your mind. There's also an opportunity to apply to work with me in the back of the book. I only work with 3 clients a quarter because I do intense stuff with people. And again, no disrespect to people who are doing okay or who want to move the needle a little bit. This is for people who are already doing well and are not satisfied with slow and steady, who want to make big leaps really fast and have, I won't swear, bleep load of fun, because you can tell I have a lot of joy and I use my sense of humor. And when you study with me, you'll experience a lot of fun, a lot of play, a lot of joy. Because this has been an honor. You can tell I'm not making this up from the joy in my face and the smile and my voice tone. I love teaching and mentoring. Uh, the only thing I love more is my family and my cats. I'm a cat daddy. I lock them out so they can't get in because they'll knock over the camera or
yeah.
close the computer or disconnect the call.
So for those listening, that was the Subconscious Sales Advantage by Paul
Right. And
Ross.
if you want to
You
get my rapid sales accelerator, just go to paulrossbook.com. Get the
paulrossbook.com.
Because when you go to paulrossbook.com, you'll get a PDF download of this. But most people like the hard copy. It's on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. Well, Paul, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show today and selling all the sales
Enjoy.
knowledge.
It's been a joy, an absolute joy.